So I'm the head of Agile Delivery at Co-op. I've been in the role for 6 months. I have not actively recruited anyone from government, yeah? So, and that feels right. You're doing important work. So I spent 5 years at GDS. So I started in government before GDS, actually. When coming into government, they said you can't do Agile in government. I remember fights on Twitter about it. And we started with a small team of about 12 people, and it grew. And we started doing an alpha for GovUK, then it became a beta. 1 team became 3 teams, became 14 teams. And then I got the privilege to work on Universal Credit. Well, other stuff as well, but Universal Credit, I've got a real soft spot for DWP and Universal Credit, because I think you're really lucky that the missions you have are so clear. You know, everyone feels them in the heart. So remember that. DWP is a really hard place to work in, from my experience anyway. But the mission is, you know, it's very clear. So I've been asked to come and talk about roadmaps. Yeah, everything I'm showing you and telling you is a work in progress. There's no right answer, but I'll share what I've learnt. That's what I thought we'd talk about. I'd really like you to ask questions as you go. You're guinea pigs for this presentation. Yeah, so it would help me. So a little bit about roadmaps and some of the things I've learned about roadmaps and how they differ from plans and the environment that we're working in. Some experiments, purposely called them experiments because I don't think there's one right way. And then maybe talk about some behaviours around road mapping and some bad smells. Let's see where we go. So planning is typically the cultural battleground. I say roadmap, someone else says plans. Yeah, we've got Gantt charts, we've got deliverables, we've got outcomes. So who's working on a big program? Is everyone working on big programs actively now for DWP? Who's got their sprints in a project plan or been made to put them into a project plan? No? I was expecting yes. So some of the experiences I had in DWP was being chased down by the Portfolio Management Office, and I think there was 20 or so of them, and they'd each take it in turns to come into Victoria Street and say, right, you need to put your sprints into my plan. Like, oh, no, please go away. And at one point I humoured them and just regretted it. But I think, planning is a hard thing, and some of the behaviours around planning. So I think it's right for people to say, kind of when's it going to be done? What are the dependencies? Yeah, what's your critical path? Yeah, and I think sometimes with Agile we can just throw all that out. It's like, no, we don't do it like that. But there's some good stuff and they're legitimate questions. And I think road mapping really helps. It's an artifact that allows everyone to cling onto it and paint a picture of the future without painting yourself into a corner. Yeah? Does that make any sense? So I love this. Agilistas love planning, just not plans. Yeah, they hate left to right or right to left with their milestones. Those kind of plans give false certainty, and everyone clings on to the wrong things. Again, UC, it's like, right, we're going to be delivered by, I think it was 2017. The whole thing's going to be rolled out. Yeah, and that was including the migration, I think, at one point. And yeah, it just paints false certainty, it gives false certainty to stakeholders and sponsors. And what I love about Agile is, the whole continuous adaptive planning, it's a brilliant thing. And I think, so a lot of this road mapping experience I had was in mixed programs, where you've got some that's waterfall and some that's Agile. If you're are you all in totally Agile programs then? That's amazing. I just wasn't expecting that. Shit. Okay.
In our heads we are.
Okay. So the other aspect of this is, as sort of an agilista, you sort of get used to, well, we're the digital bit. Yeah, and I think it's really easy to forget that it's not all software, it's not all digital, and it's not all Agile. There are other bits you have to negotiate with and make fit into your ways of working. And I think, it's legitimate to talk about operating models, the bits that are telephony, or I'm in co-op, so it's to do with funerals, burying people, putting them in fridges. How can you be agile with the businessy bits of a service? Yeah, and I think that's really important to understand. Often feels like the businessy bits, you're dealing with the non-converted. Yeah, I don't believe that's the right way. I think you can be iterative and incremental in your delivery and have those lovely feedback loops with telephony, with burying people. And I've also seen, maybe this isn't the case now, you're a mature, agile organisation, but I've seen that agile is a bit of a smokescreen for we don't have a plan. Oh, we're agile, so we don't think too far ahead, So you hide behind your ceremonies of sprinting and user research and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think that's good enough. I think people need to understand the future. Yeah. And I think, again, 6 months out of government, but the language around agile can be very alienating to other stakeholders. Do you come across that? Yeah. Roadmaps are the answer. So, in my experience, roadmaps are a good way of bridging that gap between language and different different methodologies. As I said, a roadmap provides something for everyone to cling on to. Agilistas are happy. Waterfall folks are happy. So I'll keep repeating this, but a roadmap, I don't think there's one artifact you go, this is what it should look like, right? It's the act of road mapping that gives you this alignment. It's the conversations around road mapping that are the power. And I think when you do your road mapping, I understand, okay, when you do your road mapping, get everyone around that roadmap having those conversations. Not just your agile teams, but maybe the people from technology, yeah, the bit that's over to one side, or the people from the funeral hub, or whatever. Yeah, get everyone around it. On UC, I learned a thing about sort of security and operations and policy. It was very separate in UC. There was like the digital service bit, and then there was ops, and then there was security somewhere over there, and policy, different building, Actually getting, particularly ops and security, getting ops around a wall and starting to talk about road mapping was brilliant. Because ops felt like they had a stake in how they were going to roll this out. Yeah, in UC at the time of the reset, ops were told they were going to get it on, I don't know, 2015 or 2016, and it would just roll out, and they've got a line that went roll out, in their plan. But actually allowing ops to collaborate around how it's going to roll out, really powerful stuff. And that's, I think, the approach that we agreed in 2013 is broadly the approach you're following now, although it felt really simple at the time, and I'm sure it's not. So roadmaps are really good for alignment across the business. And, road mapping and the language you use around it focuses on outcomes, not deliverables. All my scars are from DWP, but one of the things I remember was, you've got to do the L&D platform, and this was week 2. It's like, oh, what's the L&D platform? It's the deliverable, we need to do it. We need to do L&D, or whatever. And there's a lot of examples of that where people cling to a deliverable, and everyone feels it's important, and it builds, the mythology builds around a deliverable. And actually, what is it? What are we trying to achieve? So a roadmap, you can really focus on outcomes, yeah? And that changes the conversation massively. You start to think about it differently. So roadmaps are for everyone. Ta-da! So I've got some experiments now, and I really just want you to ask me questions here, because they're just pictures. I'll tell you a little story about them, what I learnt, but just ask away. Hopefully you can see them. So I told you a little bit about GovUK, starting with 1 team, 3, then 14 teams. When it got to more than 3 teams, it's like, oh, sugar, what's the manual say about this? There isn't a manual, so we had to make it up. And this was our roadmap for GovUK. Yeah, there was 14 teams. And the format was, I'm almost embarrassed about this now, but anyway, it kind of worked. Format was teams along the top, and you can't see it, but date down the left-hand side. Yeah? And all our teams would gather around this wall, and they'd put their things on the wall here. Post-launch materials, what the hell was that? I don't know. But they were our kind of epics, whatever they were. Yeah, they translated, each one of those cards was owned by the product team or the product manager, and meant something to them. And we'd gather around this wall once a week and just check in with each other. Are you working on this? You know, stand-ups type thing. All this was new. I've always made it up, but I was definitely making this up. And it really helped just align all the teams and help each other. You know, what's blocking you? We're going to do something that will probably block you. Those conversations were valuable. So this was my earliest experiment in road mapping. And it was about the conversations, not about the format. The other thing I learnt about this was there was a lot of duplication. So there's probably about 5 cards along there that said monitoring and alerts. It's like everyone was worrying about monitoring alerts. Actually, had we run some sort of Kanban system, we might have been able to limit our work in progress and sort of swarm on one thing. Anyway, it worked. Any thoughts on that?
So you said you met every week,
Hmm.
and were you focusing on each and every of those epics, or did you just choose the ones that were sort of closer to the future?
We basically, you know, you can see all the duns around here. Some poor fellow at the back probably had about 1 done. he was struggling a bit, but we'd basically look at them. This was all months, so whatever this was down here, May, June, July, or whatever, we'd basically talk about the month. And sometimes some cards would move because they'd slipped. Sometimes some cards would be brought forward, but it was really just look along the sort of current month and the big bits.
And I have just one more question.
Keep going with questions, please, please, please.
So with the timeline, you mentioned months. We have years or quarters on our timeline, and we always struggle to go beyond a certain period. So if you're going really far into the future, into sort of 2019, 2018, 2019, or 2020, the board just becomes really blank.
Okay, so we're going to talk a bit about that later.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So another observation with this, when you're sort of being sort of all agile and using your epics and your stories, it's hard to see in the future. It really is. You can only see so far. And that's fine for teams that are delivering software and are agile. It's not great for people that are trying to buy buildings, sell buildings, recruit people, whatever. It's really not great for them. And I think that's a shortcoming of just being pure agile with your epics and your stories. So I've got a road mapping technique which I think helps with that. We'll come to that.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
How did you translate what happened there against maybe any of the business case commitments?
Business case was,
I struggle with that.
you know what,
I don't struggle with the business case commitments, but it's kind of like, you know, you've got business case commitments that's got you the funding and all that's agreed, and then you've got an agile approach, but ultimately you're there project to deliver a business case.
so I think you said some interesting things there. So the business case for us on this service was GovUK. Replace Business Link, replace DirectGov. Replace the horrible blue thing, replace the horrible orange thing. One service, one domain. Save £60 million a year. That was it. That was a business case. So it was really simple for us, and we started small, and we grew. Yeah, and we did have a date in mind, because we had to renew those contracts for whoever they were taking 60 million offers a year. So there was a date where we had to get something in place so we could stop those contracts. But other than that, it was really simple. I think the other interesting thing you've just said is, you know, the business case and you've got a project within it. That's interesting. I wonder, we'll touch on this later, but you've got to see the whole thing. Yeah, you can be agile with the whole thing. You're not a small bit in it. the whole thing. You can be agile with the whole thing. And it's sort of one view of it. You shouldn't be siloed in any of that. Am I making any sense there at all? Because, yeah, I think so. What is it that you're working on, actually? Maybe give me some context. Okay.
Wider use of real-time information.
Okay.
So we have a fairly, our business case has got some, I don't want to use the word deliverables, it has got some fairly tied down dates and outcomes. So probably not comparable to maybe the business case you had for that in some ways. Some of it goes into a lot of detail, other bits of it doesn't. And our project is there to, that's what we've been stood up to do. We've been stood up to deliver that business case. We are delivering it using the agile delivery method, but ultimately we're there to deliver that business case with DWP.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have to sit and think a bit about how we get those two together.
Well, so what I'm hearing, yeah, I'm definitely oversimplifying, but you know, what you're trying to achieve is some data, some better data, more real time, yeah, and they are wonderful outcomes and perfectly measurable, and you can be wonderfully agile with that. I know I'm oversimplifying, right? But yeah, you can bit by bit by bit, you can grow the capability of real time data provision to DWP cross government. It's one thing. If you're breaking it down into smaller bits, maybe that's overcomplicating. I don't know. I don't know the details.
I think that's fine, Joe. I think mainly you are the business case. It's not to deliver it. You are the business case. You take the business case, see benefits, old world benefits realisation, see those as outcomes, and what are you learning about whether or not we're going to achieve the outcomes as you go.
So just again, are there other bits, are there work streams or other teams working on this as well?
No, it is our business case.
Okay.
And it's quite a complex book. I don't think anyone's got a business case that isn't complex and detailed. I'm sorry,
No, it's good.
I suppose I'm kind of thinking about part of that roadmap is kind of informed by the commitments that have been signed up to in the business case.
Okay.
Just trying to work out how.
So again, we'll come on to this later when we talk about other road mapping techniques. No, I really appreciate it because it's good. It's good for me to understand the context. Yeah, what's hard, and it's really easy for me to stand up here and go, "Oh, it's easy," because it's not. It's never easy. A road mapping, the conversations around it are really useful for tackling those sort of sacred cows. These time constraints that are placed upon us, or we feel that we've got to put in. It was the same on universal credit. It's got to be out by 2016. Minister says. There was a lot of that, yeah. And actually, yeah, the trade-offs weren't really clear that early on. So anyway, road mapping is useful to have those hard conversations.
How long did it take you to get to that point then, and what were the key things that you did before you could do that? Because I look at that and think, that's not for me, it's not something I'd be able to do on day one, arriving kind of with a team and thinking, right, what we're here to do.
Yeah,
so,
that's a good point.
I think some of that's maybe linked back to
Yeah. So, yeah, you don't do this on day one. I think a roadmap, you sense the time when it's needed, right? I've done roadmaps where you do some discovery and you try and build a roadmap because you feel that you need to get buy-in from your stakeholders and sponsors for just being clear about your approach. But that feels really forced because you've done no work. You haven't actually learnt anything, really. Typically, I try and force a roadmap after a kind of alpha phase where you've built something, tried it with some real users. You should definitely be clear about the next phase, whatever you want to call it, beta, whatever. And you can probably force yourself to think about beyond beta. Yeah. But I think it's really important that you are truly agile and iterative and learning from the outset. You don't try and bake in a roadmap too early.
Yes, I think this is a really useful tool for us at the right time. I think the thing we need to be a bit conscious about is people are starting to pick up on certain things and going, oh, you're agile, so you're supposed to have a roadmap, or you're supposed to have this, and start really pushing the teams for it before we're really kind of ready. So
So I've seen, one team in GDS had a roadmap on their wall, and I think it was 6 post-its. They were big post-its, but it said, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. That was their roadmap. I thought it was brilliant, because saying any more was just overcomplicating it and trying to use a tool or a technique that was just inappropriate. So it's all around, paint a picture of the future, get people comfortable. It's about, a roadmap is about getting buy-in and having the conversations around it. Like I said at the beginning, I don't think there's one format for it. So if it feels like 6 post-its are enough, and you can convince people those 6 things are the things you should be doing in that order, that's fine.
or maybe 4 pictures, Amy?
Brilliant pictures are brilliant. But this came about, so when we were running 3 teams, it felt fine, because we could just have conversations with each other. It's like we knew we'd got a mission, we kind of set ourselves some targets. Then it started to grow, and it was like, okay, let's get this on a wall. And this just emerged. Anyway, this is imperfect, really imperfect. I just want to say it is an experiment. Oh, that's a bad picture, I hadn't realised. You might have read about this online, yeah? This is a roadmap done on GovUK by a chap, by lots of people actually, but was sort of championed by a guy called Neil Williams. And I think it's a thing of beauty, yeah? It's really good. Have you all read that post? Do I need to explain? Have you read Experiments in Road Mapping by Neil Williams? Okay, just quickly then. So he's down the left-hand side, all the swim lanes are teams. Yeah, they're product teams, beautifully formed, wonderfully happy. And on the left-hand side, the colours here are his goals. Yeah, there's some goals for GovUK. They discussed within the team, they were discussed with the execs, and Neil's done a good job of explaining what they are and why they are, what the benefits are. And you see, this is a card, so they break all of their work down into features, yeah, and they've got currently, planned, and future. So that's kind of now, that's sort of within 3 months, that's the future. What's wonderful about this roadmap is it goes around a curved wall. So you stand at the now and you can't see the future. It's a wonderful little hack. And what Neil does is the product teams decide, based on the goals for the whole of GovUK, what the features should be. So search and browse is the team, iterate presentation of specialist browse pages. Whatever that means. It means something to the team and it means something to the rest of GovUK. And they've got their deadline and blockers if necessary. And down here you can't see it, but it's a different type of skills and type of roles that need to have that conversation about that card. And they meet around this every couple of weeks. I've tried lots of different things. But their routine is every couple of weeks, they gather around this and sort of just update each other and look a bit forward. Are we blocking anyone? Are we dependent on anyone? But otherwise the teams are autonomous. Yeah, they crack on. And then, so they meet with product managers, and now they've extended that to delivery managers as well. So it's quite a big group, and it takes them, I think Neil said it takes them about half an hour each time. Yeah, so they do have proper full conversations about this. And then every quarter, they will do a proper, couple of hours session and rejig this and just make sure they've got all the measurements and check everything. So it's that's their sort of planning rhythm. 2 weeks, update each other. Every quarter, update the whole wall. I think this is great. Team love it. It works. Interesting about this, and it's different for you in sort of when you're delivering services. This is entirely software, right? There's no ops or there's no policy. There's no dead people. Yeah. So it makes it very easy to break everything down into feature cards. Yeah, it feels very natural. Yeah. It works for them.